Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Alana and Rachel. Thank you for your time today. Together with Alana and Rachel, who are experienced team coaching practitioners. We are going to kick off the year with a very practical conversation about team coaching tools, which Alana and Rachel are using in their own practice. So let me very briefly introduce both of you. Alana Jossel is a seasoned leadership and team coach with extensive background in IT and organization development, currently based in Johannesburg in South Africa. Alana is PCC-accredited coach by ICF, and recently, what I've heard, was awarded with advanced certification in team coaching accreditation. So massive, massive congratulations, Alana, for this milestone. Good to have you today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. Rachel Doug is based in the Garden of Ireland, Wicklow, and Rachel is experienced executive and team coach working across the civil service, public and educational sectors, and very much delighted to partner with you, Rachel, in this capacity. As I mentioned, we are going to have an opportunity to peek behind the curtain today and kind of learn about the tool, the framework, which Alana and Rachel are using in their own team coaching practice. Hope it's going to be an inspiring session for all of you. And with that, Rachel, Alana, I'd like to invite you to get us started. Over to you.
Great. Thank you, Hecla. I really appreciate that. Yeah, maybe we could stop share screen just for a sec and we'll come back to slide 2 in a moment. But we are so delighted to welcome you here today to this webinar. And the webinar is called Illuminating Opportunities for Growth in a Team Ecosystem. And it's based on the I, We, It liminal space model, which was developed by Alana, Dr. Shona Brown, based in London, and Sandy Smith, based in Seattle. And we, the four of us and myself, and the four of us, the joy of becoming our own project team as participants on the Team Coaching Studio Diploma in Team Coaching between October 21 and May 22. And Caroline, who joins us today, was also a member of that wonderful diploma cohort. But the purpose of the kind of project as part of the work that the certification that we were doing was to produce something that would be of benefit to the team coaching community. And from our homes in Seattle, London, Johannesburg, and Wicklow, we began our musings. Now, we were working in very different sectors. Alana, very much in kind of IT, sales, commercial clients. I personally was working with very much public sector, civil servants based organizations. Shona's works extensively in the healthcare sector in the UK. And Sandy was working very much with IT, technology, and philanthropic healthcare organizations based out of Seattle and the west coast of the States. So, as you can imagine, kind of finding something to kind of land on that we kind of were taken by took us a little bit of time, but we really were started, in the work that we were doing, we're very taken by the notion that how we talk about teams really shapes our mindset about teams and influences what we pay attention to. And then kind of that creates possibilities like what are the team actually paying attention to? And so we were thinking about team ecosystems. We were covering systemic coaching. We were really drawn to the idea of different identities in teams. We liked transformative dialogue, and we really loved the idea of that liminal space. A kind of that a Gestalt kind of concept of in between, or that Italian word attraversiamo, which is let us cross over. So what happens in that in between space? we had a shared belief, and this took a little bit of nutting out, but the kind of the statement that there's no I in teams didn't really sit with us, because we spoke about the fact that often when an individual, all the individual I's show up for the team, something, truly transformative happens. So, Egle, if you wouldn't mind sharing slide 2. Um, uh, you'll see here, this was us in our early days together. And we called ourselves Team Trilogy, capturing the I, we, it, the 3 identities in a team. And the early image on the right, this is what I'm kind of showing you, is this was kind of where we started. This was our early musings. And kind of as you saw from the collateral that we've shared in advance, that kind of led us to a kind of a more polished image. So today, on slide 3, we're just going to share with you what we would hope to do today. So we would love to offer a balance in this session between our approach, sharing our approach and our experiences, and hearing about your ideas and what's resonating for you. So what we will start with is sharing with you kind of the development of the model, how we applying it, and as we call it, stories from the wild. So what are we experiencing on the ground as we use this? Because we are practitioners at heart, and really, so we're loving kind of just the opportunity today to share some ideas and our experiences with you. We will do a breakout discussion, and really we'd like to do that on the back of some sharing so that you get a sense of how this might be relevant to you in your own work. And then we're going to come back and do a kind of a wider discussion, and we'll explain how we're going to do that as we go along. The chat function is live, so if you have questions or musings that come up, or your own kind of sense of, whether you agree or not with there's no I in teams, please feel free to share it in chat, and we'll keep an eye on that. That it is being recorded, as Egle has said, but also there's resources behind this. Now, they're hosted on the invite to this site. You'll find a white paper, you'll find some of the questions, and you can access the images. We did do an article in Coaching at Work in December 2022. And if you're looking for anything on the back of this that's of interest to you, please let us know. We're delighted to kind of answer any questions. So that's kind of just teeing it up, and I'm just going to hand over to Alana to talk a little bit about, what the model represents, and how we have, how we look at the world of teams through the lens of this model.
Thanks, Rachel. Hello, everybody. Lovely to connect with you all today. I wonder if we can go to the next slide. That's great. Thanks, Michael. So, yeah, I suppose, one of the things as Rachel was speaking, in that there's no I in team was a big question for us. Also for most of us having come from being individual coaches, leadership coaches, executive coaches, and really working in the team space, really challenged some of our thinking. So what we did do is we recognized that there is an I in team, and how important it is in this model for us to consider individuals, their individual identities, history, their personal life, their needs, desires, expectations. And some of these are shared and some of these aren't shared. And I'm sure lots of you who have done some work with teams, this is often the space we've traditionally worked in terms of the I, we, is helping individuals reveal a little bit more about themselves to their team so that they can deepen understanding and work more effectively together. So that's I suppose been a lot of the context that we were coming into this with. However, the model that we came to together has been so useful in many contexts, and I'll share with you some of the contexts I've used it in. Because, as you'll see, there's a lot of movement around the model. It's really about looking at all 3 identities, all 3 domains at the same time. So looking at the individuals in the team, the we, which is the team engagement, the team dynamics, their interactions, surfacing some of these things. And sometimes it is a case of the team also becoming more aware of what they need to do to support and enable individuals that are part of the team. And at the same time, and this is where the liminal space sits, it's often and this is what we discovered, is that when there was a stuckness, it often was when the team or individuals in the team or the organization itself was in this liminal space. It's in the space of individuals not yet feeling as though they're really part of the team. And in order to really have that sense of being part of this collective, there were a lot of things that we needed to surface and address in both the we and the it space. So I know you've all been given access to our article, which really explores the model and explains it in a lot more detail. But essentially, it is these three domains, and it's how do we balance all three? We can't, in any system, pay attention to one over and above any other. So that was what we realized is, we really have to work with all three at the same time. And the systems, the processes, the purpose, the policies, all of those things, the organization, its stakeholders, are all the things that really enable both the individuals and the team. And in the absence of that, there's also a stuckness. So it's a little like imagining you've got a fish in a fishbowl, and if you take the fish out and you pat it and really help it along and cure it because it was feeling a little sick, and then put it back in the same water, it's going to get sick again. So really what we're saying in this model is, how do we consider all of these dynamics at play in organizational life? So yeah, maybe I can share a little bit around how I've applied it. So when we were in the thick of things in developing our model, I was applying it in a large multinational IT company, which was, the regions were sort of disconnected from each other. They didn't seem to quite feel as though they were working towards the same goal. They weren't really able to share on resources and really enable each other. And in applying this model, so the first part of it, which has always been a traditional approach of mine, is being really, in doing some sort of a self-insight exercise with the individuals, team interviews, individual interviews, one-on-one, understanding the people in the team and what they need and want of the team and what their experience is of the team. But over and above that is also, I use the Enneagram as a tool in terms of for them to deepen their own self-awareness and self-insight. And then when we met as a team, the first part of the process in the we space was really the sharing of what the individuals had discovered about themselves, and through that, what they may need actually from others to be the best version of themselves, and also what the team then also needed from individuals. And through these conversations, it became obvious that they were actually driving towards different goals. They didn't actually have shared purpose at the end of the day. And I worked with a colleague of mine who was also running, just after this process, a strategy session with them. And one of the things that really landed for them was this metaphor of, it felt as if they were in two rowing boats with one oar in each boat, but actually pulling in different directions. So what would happen actually if they found themselves in the same boat and rowing in the same direction? How different would it feel? And that led to this whole, the it type of conversations around their common purpose. And what was linked to that was their remuneration system, that it actually wasn't rewarding collaboration and collective achievement. It was actually setting up this competitive dynamic. So post this session, they really looked at those things, and things, from what I understand, have improved. As we know, it's always a process. And then a little bit more recently, I was doing work with a large financial institution, and it wasn't in a traditional team coaching context. This was more in an instance where their employee engagement survey, the results had really dropped quite significantly. Some of the reasons they were aware of, coming back into the office and changes in leadership and a whole lot of other things. But they really wanted to get to the bottom of why. Why is it that people were really not happy at work? So I ran these focus groups in this area. It was a division, and there were various departments in that division. But the way the focus groups were structured was really around this I, we, it model. And it was really, really helpful because it was also, it's often in these large group contexts, there's something about, it's just the organization, why, or our leadership. Why is it that they are doing, they're not serving as good role models, or, whatever it may be. And by using this model, there was also a piece that they needed to take ownership of in terms of the I. So what is it that I can do? For example, one of the topics was career advancement. What is it that I can do to advance my career? What is it that the support that I need from my team to support my career advancement? What does the organization need to do to help me support my career advancement and advancement of the organization? And by having these conversations, what really also came up was, that certain things weren't clear. Career paths weren't clear. There were certain structures that weren't properly in place. And these are things that they are going to take away now and hopefully address. Another big issue was, being told to come back to the office 3 days a week. I don't know if it's the same in other countries, but in South Africa, there's a strong move to getting people back into the office. And there's a lot of resistance to that because people have really enjoyed their flexibility and their freedom, and feel like they're being micromanaged and not really understanding what the purpose is of coming back into the office. And when we went into the conversations around the we, what they were also saying is that, we have, they say they want us to collaborate better, but we come back to the office and we're still having the same meetings on Teams. So how does that serve us? So that then, it's also led to a whole thing. Okay, well, what does this mean? What are our new ways of working then? It was also led to a whole conversation on seating, which is the it stuff. So I think that what that really just illustrates how we have to pay attention to all three dimensions. As soon as we start paying more attention to one of these domains at the expense of some of the others, an imbalance arises. So, with this requirement for them to come back to the office, it was really coming from the it place, but it hadn't considered the I and the we. And I think that really just highlights yet again how, we really need to consider all three domains. So, yeah, sorry.
Up there, Alana? Yeah. Will I pick up on that? I think
Sure.
that there's a question coming in which kind of speaks a little bit to that. Alessandro, thank you for that. I kind of like the question that you've asked. I think, one of the things, just to give you a sense of how we use the model, is we're using it really in two key contexts. One is just often it's the start of a team engagement to try and generate some dialogue to help a team land into the recognition of the ecosystem and build some kind of commonality around the ecosystem. And Egla, if you wouldn't mind sharing the other slide, you'll see that we've kind of put together some questions to help dialogue in the team. So in this case, the kind of team, it's the kind of sorry, that's a lot of somebody's noise. Yeah, thank you for that. You see, this is kind of the we it space. So what'll happen is like we offer these questions. We find people love to sit down to work through the questions. Quite often, what we do, like we've a very polished looking image, and often it's a scribble that we're doing. But it kind of gives what we've found with doing the scribbled image or even kind of a handout image and offering some of the questions that people get very engaged in it. They can kind of find where they're sitting. And what's worked really well is we often ask teams, what are you drawn to? Like, where is the energy? And so it can take us then down the route of doing a lot of we work like team, the kind of the team, looking at the team processes. And it's very complementary. So personally, I find I might start here using this, see where the energy is in the team, generate some really good conversations. And then we might end up doing some waterline work, some dialogue work, some conflict work, but it's all kind of anchored out of that image. It also, the reason why we have, as you can see behind me, a kind of a swirly image is that there's kind of energy generated in stepping into well, how do I show up for the team? What's the impact of the ecosystem in terms in which we're operating on us as a team. And so what we love is this kind of framework does not compete with any other team coaching tool. Lots of other things can kind of fall out of it, I suppose. And I'm just going to give you kind of a very little picture on the next slide of a team that I was working with. And there's the scribbled version because I'm not very good at drawing circles. But that's kind of the team standing up and writing their notes. And for this team, and we've offered loads of questions and so they're not designed to be a limited number. You could take it and add your own questions. But this question of this was a school, what aspect of our school's context and really most impacted on the team. And it was really interesting with this team. It was a very disadvantaged area that they really recognized that first image when they were going, oh my God, like it's all about the context that's impacting on us as a team. And they had a very complex stakeholder group. And the next phase was they wanted to go away and work in that space. And they were drawn there first. So they started engaging with stakeholders, trying to kind of contextualize their needs. And then they moved into the we space saying, okay, well, how are we going to operate as a team to meet those needs? So that's kind of just giving you a little sense of it. And then the next slide after it is a team where they really and this is where I got kind of the image printed up on a big canvas board, and people got up and broke them into groups and wrote on the images. But they really wanted to map their system, and so this was kind of even kind of them just saying, actually, what's going on in our world? Like that was the kind of piece of work we were doing. What's going on in our world? What's going on in the I space? And a big thing about the I space was about kind of a huge sense of kind of connection to the overall organizational purpose, but limited connection to the sense of the purpose of what they were doing as a team. And they were talking about in their we space, they recognized that collegiality was so highly valued that there was very little challenge or when challenge came up, it was taken as something kind of insulting. And then in the it space, they recognized that they had huge challenges. And the biggest one is a big new IT system and the impact of that. It just generated so much conversation and led them to prioritize 4 key things that they wanted to work on as a team. So that's just giving you a little bit of a taste of it, and I see some more questions coming in. That's okay. So what we're going to do, right? So we've talked enough, and we're going to hand over to you, and we're going to invite you. You'll see in the next slide into a breakout room, and Egla's very kindly going to send you all off into the ether in smaller groups. And we would love you just before we get into kind of us all having a conversation together, just in your smaller groups for 10 minutes. What has sparked your interest on the basis of what we've shared? How might you use this model in your own practice? And what are you drawn to discuss with the wider group? And just in that final question, what we're going to do when we come back is, could you just nominate one person volunteer from the group to join a wider discussion? So we're going to do kind of a kind of an ongoing discussion rather than asking each group, just actually have a discussion with one member from each of the groups together. So we'll come back in a little fishbowl exercise, as they describe it, after this. So I hope that's okay. We're just going to send you off for a little while at Egla's beautiful ease. Alana and I have such ease that it's all been managed. And we'll see you back in 10 minutes.
So we would like to hear from you. What has sparked your interest? Who would like to go first? Let's just hear from you. Rachel and I are just really going to be partnering with you as we unpack this a little bit.
I'll kick it off. In our group, we really love the simplicity. We loved the visual because we think, and I think even somebody in our group had mentioned, if you said nothing and just presented the visual, it says a huge amount. So we really love the simplicity of it, but not to be kind of lured into that it's simplistic because it's anything but simplistic. So that kind of mix between the simplicity of the use of it, but the complexity of what it can deliver was something that kind of really sparked our interest. And then the visual piece and how it by itself can tell a lot, So we thought that was kind of the bit that sparked us initially in the discussion in that first question.
Lovely. Lovely. And was there any thing that came up in your group in terms of how you might use this in your own practice?
We felt at the initial stages it could be very, very beneficial at the very, very beginning, and also very beneficial with stakeholders because there's that sense of, can you go and fix the team? Can you fix the challenge that we have with them? And kind of nearly, removing themselves from the challenges that are going on. So I personally felt that the visual for the stakeholders could be very, very powerful. And then the use of that at the initial stages, that kind of scoping out stage, that those very, very first sessions could be very beneficial.
Yeah. Lovely. Thanks, Kate. Who would like to go next?
I can go next, Alan.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So we've been interested to see how reality can be depicted from a different perspective, from the I, we, and it perspective. And most importantly, we also spent time to discuss the liminal space among the three. So how the dynamic component of this model can be really interesting to be used on how to craft reality, moving from the different perspective and knowing that it's not only from I through we to it, but also vice versa, because it is also informing how we see ourselves as individual and as a team. So those kind of combination of element with the dynamic component of how the liminal space, let's say, create conditions and space among the different status are pretty relevant.
Beautiful.
And another aspect that has been also highlighted has been the simplicity of the system. That doesn't mean simple like, let's say, discounting reality, but simple means also the ability to be applicable in a much wider opportunity than to make things too complex for a team to understand and move forward.
I love that you've captured that kind of in between space, because you see in the image itself, I don't know where it's on my right or my left, but the kind of the lighter shading is kind of to indicate that liminal space. So but it exists not just between the I, the we, and the it. And as you said, either way. So, there's a huge piece around how does the expectations impact on the team and impact on the individual, as well as coming the other way. But I love the fact that it's the outside of it is also, is also porous. So it's what's going on outside maybe it's impacting more on an individual, or maybe it's more impacting on the team. But so there's always that sense of that kind of, I love this kind of lighter, this coming in space and the impact of it. So yeah, wonder, did that resonate with anybody else, or would you have any of the rest of you have something different that came up for you?
All good. Yeah, no, I'm just on a line here, but I'm not contributing.
Yeah, I might come in for a moment.
Yes, thanks, John.
Okay, I'll be hitting the road now in the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, I like what you just said there. I suppose in our group, a number of people didn't have much experience in the team end of things. So I suppose we were sharing, some of our experiences. But one of the things it reminds me of the Adair model, our own individual needs, the task needs, and the maintenance needs. So there's some overlap. But what I like about it is they tend to intersect in the way they're depicted. Whereas in this instance, it's that space of vulnerability and the liminal space is where we get most. So that I like that, and also that the understanding that there are structural matters outside. So there are things that impact us, like this. If it's a business, there are global dimensions that are going to come in and that we have to deal with, and maybe perceived as outside our control, but what do we do? So I like that, but I suppose in my own experience, it's quite interesting that you need to understand, I think, in my experience, certainly, that individuals have their own needs, and this recognizes that, that the we in team and so forth is an interesting one. But at the end of the day, I think in terms of using it, I would agree probably more the earlier times. But if people don't have a clear sense of purpose and that's not clearly articulated, then it's very hard to actually pull together, using the boat analogy or two boats that you mentioned earlier. So I think that would be very, very important. And in my work with teams, no matter how well the team works, that's one that needs time. And then how are we going to do that and recognize all the time that we have our own individual needs, career, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think that what you've touched on is very important there, John. This is a journey. The team coaching isn't something that happens in a once-off session. It's a journey. It's a process. So so that's how we've used it, and that's its intention. And I think the other thing is, when you speak about individual needs, even in the one-on-one coaching space, I found it quite helpful, because there is something about also engaging with somebody around what is that they need from those people that they work with. And even if you can't apply it with the team, there is something about encouraging them to have those conversations with their team members. So yeah, I think that it can be applied in very many different contexts. Thanks, John. Anyone want to add to what John has said, or maybe has something different to bring in?
I'm happy to share from our group. And yeah, thank you, Alana. I think it's interesting around the individual side, because when we coach individuals, we're also coaching and trying to understand what's the context that they're operating in. So I think some of these questions could be very helpful. So to cover maybe the first two questions around what sparked interest and how would we use it in our practice. So taking a step back, initially for this session, I think there were also a number of people in our group who haven't done team coaching. So really, that was the interest of coming here in the first place, was to understand a little bit more about it and how it differs from individual questions. Other things that came up in the conversation was around the importance of, pre-prep going into the session. And what really sparked interest was the good open questions that are listed here. And then secondly, having a framework for understanding the holistic ecosystem that the team operates in. And sometimes it's hard to see that when you're in the team. You're just pulling all those levers, but you're not really taking that mindful step back. And on how to apply it and use it in practice, again, the use of the questions, very helpful just to kind of initiate, to kick off. Also thinking about how to keep the language positive was also mentioned, and then practical things like, using whiteboards and making sure all of that was planned and prepped was important. And then we did have a couple of points for discussion with the wider group. I don't know if you want to cover that now, or was that a separate piece after?
I think we're gonna run out of time. So
Yeah.
just mention them, and then maybe Ruth or Annabelle or Jacob, if there's anything else you'd kind of add to what's been said, we could pick it up. So Colin, what did you think would go out that people might be drawn to?
I mean, very quickly, I think one of the challenges that came up around team coaching was actually how to sell it in the first place. And how do you actually enable that discussion, why this model, like really kind of positioning it, and getting that solid buy-in across the board, was important. And then, how to keep people engaged through the process. They were just some of the topics that came up.
Lovely. Thank you. I mention that then before we close out. Yeah. Annabelle, I see you've come off mute, and Annabella, Ruth, or Jacob, we just a quick sense check with you, maybe if there's one thing maybe additionally mention.
Yeah, so just basically in our group, the things that sparked the interest of this model was that it can really support discussion within a team. There was mention of the flip chart work, drawing in people, engaging people in the discussion, and also there was the interest in how you had used it in the focus groups, and then. We also talked about the challenge that in many teams, there are more we's. So a person within one team may actually belong to multiple teams, and that could be actually quite a challenge in some cases, and how to work around that. And we also talked about the importance of the I in your model in terms of individuals having their own fears, trust issues, blockers, ego coming into the way, sense of belonging. And I know one of the points in the beginning of your conversation was whether I should be in the model, but we all felt very strongly that it should be. The inner development goals, the 17 inner development goals were mentioned as a guideline. And also there was the question of what enables the full ability for a person in a team to fully lean in. So that sort of question of enabling that.
Lovely.
So that's what our discussion was around.
Lovely. Some lovely questions there. Yeah.
Things you could spend hours talking about.
Absolutely.
But in the interest of time, we are going to close out in a moment or two, because I know Egla would like to just tell us about some of the upcoming sessions. But maybe Ruth, did you want to add anything? Just any one thing that we didn't cover?
Oh, thanks for asking, Rachel. I think the concept of how the I in the team is very linked to psychological safety came up. And as such, we see it as critical, not sort of an optional inclusion. The bilateral relationship or nature of a team is also interesting to analyze. So that a team serves the brand, the corporation, but also who serves the team and what space is that held in. Well, the concept of liminal space is sort of plugged into this. And then something Minoru mentioned actually about the corporate context in Japan, and how talking through and mapping individual strengths and growth areas can actually help define roles. So again, a conversation about dynamic and definition and how that shows up in a team.
Lovely.
Mhm.
Maybe we could invite everybody else just to come back on screen if you're happy to do that. And Jekam, did you want to add anything there just from your team? Was there anything left before we hand back to Egla? Okay, that's fine. So look, just from our perspective, sorry, we haven't kind of time to go out into a wider discussion. But what I was just going to say is, if anybody wants to pick up with us afterwards, if we just, our greatest encouragement, would you please take this, take the paper, take the questions, try it out, and if you want to come back and let us know if you have any questions on it, just come back. It's like, we designed it to use it, so we're very happy to send it out into the world and let it evolve as it goes ahead. But we really wanted, Alana and I, Alana, first, thanks very much for co-hosting this together, but also to thank all of you for your
Rachel.
contribution today. So,
Lovely.
Egla, will we hand back to you?
Absolutely. I just wanted to truly appreciate your generosity in sharing the model, your time. And I shared with you in the chat the link where you can find the white paper, the model itself, the questions which you can use in your own practice. Again, generously shared by Rachel and Alana. Really insightful and inspiring session. So thank you very much.